What's going on, YouTube? RDAP Dan here, Federal Prison Time Consulting. Happy freaking Friday to everybody. Today's video is a little bit different, a little bit unique. I'm actually going to be teaming up with another prison consultant, Brandon from Federal Prison Insider, who's sitting in the studio right now. He's going to be joining us here in a second. Brandon has decided to team up and collaborate with RDAP Dan. So, Brandon, welcome.
Good day. How you doing, Dan?
I'm good. This is funny. This is like every time I talk to somebody on the phone, they're like, "Oh my God, Dan, I've only seen you on YouTube." It's weird talking to you for real. It's kind of like talking to a celebrity right now, Brandon.
Yeah. Well, likewise. And that's funny. I know that happens almost every consulting call. Someone's like, "Oh, I can't believe I'm talking. I feel like I know you." That'll happen when you put out, 400 videos.
Yep. You've definitely been busy in the scene since you came home, which is really cool. A lot of times when I first started doing the consulting, some of the other consultants would get almost a little upset that there was like a new person in the space. And I encourage everybody that comes home from prison to, not necessarily become a consultant. If it goes that angle, great. But I encourage everybody to share their story, share what they went through, share information that can help others, because some of the biggest questions I get, and I'm sure you can relate, are, I wish there was more information out there. I wish I knew this before I went. And it's like, fuck, there's like 1,000 people that go to prison every day. If everybody just shared their information, there wouldn't be this taboo thought process behind it where people have suicidal thoughts and the fear of fleeing. So I'm really happy to be doing this with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the thing when you went to prison, when I went to prison just a little bit after you, it sounds like, I was having nightmares about getting shanked, about getting in fights, about, I just thought that prison was something different than what I ended up going through. And it was just the mental load and the stress was outrageous. And so when I got there halfway through my sentence, I was like, oh my God, like I got to get information out about what it's really like, because it's, once you get there, it's kind of mind blowing. Like, oh, it's like this, it's not what you see on TV and in the movies. And so that was kind of at the heart of the whole process for me, and probably something similar for you.
Hold on. What's that, Tony? No, I'm good. Go ahead. It's exactly the same process. And guys, make sure you check out Brandon's channel. I just posted it in the comments there. So let's tell people what we're doing today, Brandon. So Brandon's got Federal Prison Insider, which, and I'm going to let you tell a little bit about your story, how you got into this, but you're a consultant and you've actually created quite the DIY system for some of the individuals out there that are going through the same process, whether you're a wealthy, rich, white collar individual that's got, billions with a B sitting in the bank, or you were a secretary that was working for somebody that's also going to federal prison, and maybe you don't have the finances to afford a high-priced federal prison consultant. Brandon has created one hell of a course where you can pretty much get what you need without the expense associated to it. So take us through that, Brandon.
So the thought process behind it, and when I was there, this is all the information that I wanted to know before I went to prison. When I got to prison, this is everything that I would have wanted to know from the day I got arrested until the day I released. And I put it all into one comprehensive step-by-step guide, basically because prison consultants are totally worth it if you have the money to spend. If you don't have the money to spend, there should be a lower price point where people can get in for $500 or so, and they can get everything that they need to reduce their sentence and to feel at peace before they go. That was the biggest thing for me. Like, I did 3 extra years in prison. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars I didn't need to on lawyers and the process, because I had no idea what was going on. You get indicted and then you're panicked and then you're just winging it, and you're basically hoping your lawyer takes care of you. Like, here, take my money, make sure I don't go to prison that long, and like make sure everything works out. And that's just, bottom line is, that's not the way to do it. Like, there's so much input and control and things that we can do to help ourselves before going to prison that I just felt like it was monumentally important to get some sort of step-by-step guide out there that people can kind of afford if they can't, do the done for you services.
And so why did you go to prison? What kind of trouble did you get yourself into? And
Well,
did you hire a prison consultant?
so I was I was a commercial pilot, and pretty wild background. Like I just always kind of wasn't necessarily following rules. I didn't have a good structure in my life. So I was a commercial pilot, and I started loading my airplane full of weed and flying it around the country. And honestly, just in my mindset at that point, I just didn't consider consequences, and also, kind of had the idea, oh, weed, it's not that big a deal, even if I get caught. And so I got caught, obviously, by the FBI, and going to prison changed my mindset a lot. I grew up a lot. I think that's something that happens for people in prison a lot. You get there, if you're working on yourself, and you realize, how irrational you may have been in the past, and kind of the deep rooted things that you used to believe that are part of your thought process. And so that was a big thing for me. I was just didn't think about much before.
And you did RDAP as well, right?
Yeah, I went through RDAP and just fully restructured how I think about the world, how I approach things. Just came to terms with the mistakes that I made, why I made them, how I could improve my, thinking. And so, yeah, it's funny, but going to prison in a lot of ways changed my life for the positive in ways that nothing else could have. I would have just I was working in biotech as a stem cell salesman, and I was a commercial pilot at the same time. And I was just trying to make as much money as possible and have as much fun as possible. And that's just not the way to live life. That's not the way that puts a smile on your face every morning when you wake up. And so yeah, prison and RDAP specifically got me on a path where I'm a very grateful, happy, at peace, successful person. And I owe that to prison and RDAP.
If you really meant it, you would have your RDAP cup like I have
mine. I know. Instead, I've got a yellow branded cup here. Yeah,
I've definitely got my use. I don't know. Not every RDAP ran things, the same, but a lot of places did things a little bit different. Ours had a lot of little like giveaways they would give if you did a positive praise, and you were walking in a straight line and coloring inside the lines, it'd give you like a coffee cup that you could use, which I thought was cool. I've got a water bottle somewhere too. But so you got indicted. When did you actually get indicted? What year?
I think I got indicted in like 2012. And then I was on pre-trial for 2 years. And then I had, a court case. And then then it took another I didn't report for 6 months. So I think I went to jail. I think I ended up going around, I forget exactly which year I went. I think I got out 2016. So let's say, okay. Yeah. It's not clear. It's so long ago. It's like, I don't know. I was in jail
I try to tell people it's like Groundhog Day. Like going through it every day is really drastically damaging to your mental health. But when it's all said and done, and you come home from prison, you get back into your regular stream of life, and you're going to work, you're going out with friends, you're paying bills. Every day has got a new curve to it, where going through the pretrial phase and going through the prison phase, most days there's a lot of similarity, where it's just really awfulizing and like carrying around a giant gorilla on your back, that once it's all said and done, all of that kind of blends into like one big giant day. It really does. Because I'm sure there's people that in prison that you became friends with, you're like, I'm never going to forget this person. And right now you're like, fuck, what was his name?
Yeah, for sure.
It's not because you didn't like the person. You just can't remember. What was pretrial like? Like, how much did you know about prison before you went? What did you think it was going to be like versus the reality of your first day in prison?
So I didn't know anything about prison, never expected to go to prison. Didn't know anything about the federal court system. And so I got arrested, and I hired an expensive attorney, gave an attorney 80 grand, and just was like, okay, I'm going to pay, and hopefully this guy will start fixing things. And turns out he was just a, shark, collects money, sits on cases, slow plays it. If you give someone your life savings, you're expecting them to be working like out of their mind. And it's just a lot. I don't want to hate on all attorneys. There's great ones out there, but a lot of them they're not going to put in the effort that you would hope when your life's on the line. And so I just had no idea. So I just paid an attorney and had no idea about preparing a sentencing package or preparing for court or accepting responsibility or negotiating a plea deal or what a pre-sentencing report was or how to get character reference letters. It's just like none of these things were in my repertoire or anything. And I ended up actually fighting my case because I thought, well, I got this good lawyer and he says, let's go to trial. And I've got a deal on the table for 2 years. So, 2 years is the same as whatever else they're going to give me. 2 years, 8 years, who cares? Like if you're going to prison. And that's like a mistaken thinking. 2 years is like basically nothing, especially because if your deal's for 2 years and you have a great sentencing package, you probably get that down to 18 months or a year and a day, and be out before you know it, and I didn't know any of that. And so I fought it, ended up getting 5 years and preparing for the trial and all of that was the most stressful, nerve-wracking time of my entire life because your entire life's on the line. And then knowing that you're going to go to prison and all of that, waking up with nightmares, sweating for months on end is also was the most stressful time of my life. The day that I walked into prison, when I finally walked into the camp my first day, it was like all of that stress and weight just went off my shoulders. When the guys, some friendly dudes first came up and were like, hey, here's some shampoo and shower sandals and a toothbrush to like get you started. Like, hey, do you need any food? You hungry? And like, it's just like, wait, are you guys trying to trick me or, what's going on? And then all of a sudden it's like, holy shit. Like I'm actually going to be able to do this. Like I was picturing before I went, I just hit the gym the whole time. I was benching over 300 pounds. I was just all swole and ready to go. I was just basically ready to go in and start fighting, and that's
what we see on TV, right?
Yeah. That wasn't the scene. Yeah.
I thought the same thing. I really thought that, people offering me things, I was like, oh, this comes with a price,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure that does go on in certain types of custody levels. And you made it real clear in these courses you have. These courses are designed for like camps and low custody level individuals. But yeah, it's not like what you see on TV. And these courses are actually, they cover a lot of stuff. I was actually pretty impressed when you originally reached out to me. I said, send me a copy of the course. Let me see what you got, because I've seen some other courses where it's really just like a glorified self-surrender checklist.
Yeah.
So let's kind of so guys, also real quick, there's 2 ways you can sign up for this course, or multiple ways, but the 2 easiest ways, if you want to get a discount, is one, there's a link in the description of this video, which I posted it right here as well. Book a free consultation. And in that consultation, we will offer you a discount off of the price. I think the price is set at what is it? Is it
$495?
$495. So it's set at $495, and so for $495, they get both of these, right? They get the sentencing GPS and the Insider's Guide to Prison.
The Insider's Guide to Prison, we can make that happen for both of them. The Insider's Guide to Prison is a separate course, and it's usually $197, and then if you buy it with the sentencing GPS, it's just $97. So it's an extra $100 usually, but we can throw that in because
you're a nice guy.
I like your listeners. Yeah.
He likes our listeners, guys. You hear that? We got the approval.
Yeah.
But we will give you a discount off of the $495 if you either click on the link in the description, or you see at the bottom where it says text the word RDAP to 866-349-5488. I'll put you on our notification text message list, which that also will let you know when we go live and share other videos, things of that nature. But if you're on that list, we will be sending random discounts, coupon codes, promotions we're running. And now that Brandon is teaming up with us, because Brandon's going to be taking a little bit more of a back seat. He still wants to continue to help. He wants to continue to put out content, but he's got a lot of other irons in the fire at the same time. So he reached out to see if we could kind of merge this in with what we're already doing. And I love the idea because I talk to people every day that they just can't afford, between $3,000, $7,000, whatever it might cost, depending on their situation. And this is a great alternative for somebody that wants the help, but they can't afford the full service. So, Brandon, on the sentencing GPS, because this is obviously more designed for somebody that's in the pre-trial phases, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So the difference between the course, the sentencing GPS is a step-by-step guide, everything you need to prepare to basically get a shorter sentence at trial. The Insider's Guide to Prison is about being inside prison and exactly all the things that happen your first 30 days in prison when you walk through the door, how to handle those free gifts like that we're talking about. Like there's an appropriate way to handle that. Just so those are the two guides. One's before you go to prison, one's when you hit prison.
And if you were to summarize what they get in the sentencing mitigation side of things, how would you summarize that?
So it starts you off with an overview and like exactly all the things that are going to happen in order. It starts you off with writing your personal narrative or your personal story, because getting a general theme to what you're going to present to the court is an important place to start, because you're going to repeat that theme over and over in each different part of the court process. So then it's going to tell you how to hire a lawyer. Don't make the same mistakes I did. The ways to work with your lawyer. Then it will tell you about how to negotiate a plea deal. A lot of people just throw that on their lawyer, but there's a lot of things the government does in plea deals, little tricks that they play or that they slip in there that you can be looking for. Because a lot of times a lawyer gets a plea deal, they're like, hey, just sign this, and people sign it. But you can ask questions, you can get things changed. That's important. After figuring out how to do the plea deal, it preps you for the pre-sentencing interview. This is the first time you're going to talk directly with the government, with your lawyer. And so this is an opportunity for you to start telling your personal narrative, start telling the theme of how you're accepting responsibility, but kind of what was behind you committing the crime. And so a lot of people just do their PSR. They just go answer the questions. They're not prepared at all. Most lawyers don't say anything about how to prepare for a PSR or how to angle or how to get your story in there. But that's part of preparing for the PSR is important, because that's going to go in front of the judge eventually.
It seems like, not to cut you off, it seems like, I think I read somewhere in some of your writings in here, because even like our clients that hire us, we go over all of this. Obviously, we help them prepping for the PSR, the narratives, the reference letters. This seems like this could be a good add-on, even for somebody that might already have a consultant, because it's, you're not going to be on the phone 24/7 with your consultant. You might get a call on the weekend from your attorney. You're stressing. You said it best. I don't know. I think you said Caesar said it, and we use it all the time, where basically no one's going to work harder for you than you are. If you're expecting somebody else to put in more effort and more due diligence than you're willing to put in, I believe you have to kind of be ready for a outcome that is not as desirable as you would like. And you cover a lot of that in here, which makes this really, in my opinion, useful information, because it's going to give somebody an extra level of accountability. You're going to be able to hold your attorney accountable, your consultant accountable, because now you're going to know the questions in here. And you really went through the detail in here, which was great on the, let me find it again here, on the lawyers, which was something that I think more people need to pay attention to. There's a whole video in there, and he actually does a video for every segment on here. I don't know how many hours of video are in this entire 2-part tutorial, but I would guess it's 2 or 3 hours of video easy. Mm-hmm. But there's talking about the difference between these attorneys, and you probably get the same question is, I hired this high-priced attorney. I don't feel like he's doing anything for me. I get the same complaints, whether it was a high-priced private attorney or an appointed attorney that works directly for the government, or an appointed attorney that's a private attorney taking federal cases through the defender's office. And in many situations, you nailed it when you talked about the fact that some of these attorneys that are taking these federal cases that have their own private practices, many of them, don't solely do federal criminal law. Some of them do federal and private criminal law, and some of them don't even focus on criminal law at all. It could be loss mitigations, it could be tax attorneys, it could be personal injury attorneys. Do you find that a lot when you talk to defendants?
Yeah, it's something to look out for. It's not, I wouldn't say a lot, but it's something that happens. And understanding the landscape thoroughly is the best tool that you have to protecting yourself, to getting less time, to knowing your rights. It's a What sticks out to me is how jaded everyone is. So the defenders, the prosecutors, the judge, like, no one cares about you. You are a cog in a wheel that they grind every day, all day, and it just happens. And so, what I try to encourage people to do is know every aspect of what's happening, so you can ask questions and you can remove yourself from just getting shuffled through the system. You get shuffled through the system, you're going to get the same results everyone else gets. If you know what's going on and you ask questions each step along the way, you're going to get magnificently different results. And
Why do
the
you think
only
people are so afraid to ask their attorneys questions sometimes? I have defendants all the time tell me, well, my attorney seems like he's aggravated. How would you tell somebody to handle that type of a situation?
Well, knowledge is power. So it's not necessarily about asking your attorney for advice on things. They kind of do things how they do, and they are kind of aggravated and just working fast because they get paid, $100 every 15 minutes. So, uh, when you're getting paid by the minute, like, your concept of spending time with people and answering questions is different. So I think that's part to understand, is how attorneys operate. And the way to get around that is by, you have to know yourself, and your attorney works for you. And so you send them a message and say, hey, in my pre-sentencing report, I want to make sure to talk about this angle. Like, so, or you say, hey, in my in my plea deal, it looks like I only got 1 point for acceptance of responsibility. Why was that? You have to know enough to ask questions for your attorney to respond to you and give you information. If you just go, hey, can you tell me more about my plea deal? They're getting paid every minute. They don't have time to do that, So it's kind of, I think, about understanding how attorneys think and realizing that this is really going to come down to you knowing enough to ask the right questions. And so asking the right questions, I think, is the key.
Yeah, for sure. Being able to, the whole attorney accountability. And it's not that your attorney is intending to do a poor job. I don't think that's what I'm
No.
trying to say, or definitely it's not what Brandon's trying to say. But I do believe, just because it's not like it's happened once or twice, the majority of my clients, they have these silent gripes with their defense counsel. And usually I think it comes from a distance of communication, where they're not asking the right questions because either they don't know them. A lot of times when they're thinking about hiring a consultant, I ask them, have you told your attorney? Well, my attorney, they're kind of afraid of their attorneys. It's almost like they're afraid they're going to get yelled at, or they're no longer going to be their attorneys. And I believe that, you're the one potentially that's going to be going to prison. So I don't think there's any harm in, pissing off your attorney if that's what needs to happen for you to get a better sentence. Because whether you go to prison or not, your attorney's not losing sleep. He's not going to change what he's going to eat for dinner. So you should be kind of putting yourself into that situation to where you're holding yourself accountable. Because, like, if you're going to go to prison and you're going to be sitting in a bunk, the same bunk that Brandon was sitting in, the same bunk I was sitting in, there's going to come a point where you're either staring at a book, you're going to be staring at a concrete wall, you're going to be staring at a picture of your family, and the thought's going to come through your head, what the fuck did I do to get here? And obviously you can't go back and do that. But many of you are in a phase right now where there are mitigating factors that you can do. And you're going to ask yourself at some point, is there anything I could have done differently aside from not commit the crime? Is there anything I could have done differently that could have mitigated my sentence better? Prepping for the PSR, for things like RDAP, getting yourself accumulated and set up for the First Step Act, what you can do to receive additional halfway house, how you're mitigating your mindset. Your mindset has a big role on this. There's people that are sitting at home right now going through this, and they might be in the very early stages where they still have 6 months to a year, 18 months before the end of the road's going to come, where there's things they could be doing different that they're not doing right now because they're stuck in this negative mindset, or they're awfulizing. And, oh my God, what am I going to tell my kids? No one's going to understand. I'm never going to get a job again. I'm going to lose my house. You start bringing down the house of all the negativity, which does you no good. Engaging in your own case of what you can, I'm not saying become a legal expert overnight, but just with a little bit of information here that Brandon has provided on this DIY, this a course like this, in my opinion, This could be a $1,500 course or $2,500 course very easily, because we did a DIY just on the personal narratives a couple of years ago, just on the narrative and the reference letters. It was a basic DIY, and we were selling that for a couple $100. We just got away from it because a lot of people, they still ended up needing more of the hand holding, and we just weren't in a situation to create a more in-depth DIY, which Brandon has here. And I think this is going to be a beautiful collaboration, because half of the people I talk to just cannot afford the consulting fees. And it's horrible to say, sorry, we can't help you because you're broke. This is a situation where somebody that is struggling financially can really put something into place. And it's going to allow you to kind of see more of the process of what's really needs to get done. And if you were on the fence about hiring a consultant and you engage in this, this might be where you realize, hey, it is worth the money to fork over and put myself in a situation to receive the best possible outcome. Did you have any help, Brandon, when you were going through your process? What are some of the big pitfalls that you made yourself, that if you could go back and tell your younger self some advice, some things you could have avoided?
So the first thing was just thinking that there was a huge correlation between how much you spend on an attorney and how hard they're going to work for you. That's something I go through very thoroughly in the courses, how to pick an attorney. And it's not just all about spending the most money. Sometimes a public defender does a much better job. It's really about how you interact with the attorney, how they're working for you if you're asking the right questions. So spending big money on an attorney was a bad move. Taking my case to court was a bad move. I was under the impression that I had a chance of winning. Wait
a minute, you went to trial?
Yeah.
Back up a little bit.
Yeah. So I had a 2-year deal. I had a 2-year deal on the table, and consulting with my lawyer. I remember I asked him the question, "Hey,
your attorney hated you. I already know.
Just give me some advice here. If this was your own brother, would you think he has a chance of winning, and would you send him a trial?" He said, thought about it for a second, and said, "Yeah, I think so." And I was like, "Dang, dude. Well, I'm a risk taker. Let's roll." And so, I went to trial. So with a 2-year deal on the table, I ended up getting 5 years. The government asked for 8 years. The judge gave me 5. So that was a mistake. People should go to trial if they're genuinely innocent, or if they have, a rock solid case, but the federal government has already taken you to a grand jury and indicted you. So it's a very high success rate. And then they have a lot of, tactics that they can use that you're most likely going to be, you're going to go to jail, So
are you saying that some of these tactics might not be ethical?
Some of the stuff that happened in mine, I was surprised because I already thought they had enough evidence, but some of the stuff they brought in was just very outrageous. Like, they will pull out, it won't be ethical. They're pulling out all the stops and cheating to win. And they have a over 90, I think they have a 98% conviction rate. And
it's a 98% conviction rate when you counter in people that take plea deals, but just on people going to trial, it's still like 75%, which is still really high. It's not favorable. And I imagine you've got to be probably Mother Teresa with an airtight alibi, a case of mistaken identity, to walk away unfazed. So you went to trial. Let me ask you a question. So your guidelines were whatever they were. You were facing like 5, 6, 7, 8 years at trial versus a 24-month plea deal. If your guidelines had been facing, let's say, like, if there's a bunch of charges that they had dropped, but if you go to trial, they put the charges back on there, and you're facing like 30 years at trial versus a 2-year plea deal, do you think you still would have went to trial? Would you roll those dice, or is it hard to say now because it's hindsight?
No, I wouldn't have rolled those dice. I was nervous rolling it was like 6 years, which was, my lawyer said, if you lose, you'll probably get 5 or 6 years. So he was right about that.
Okay.
And so to me, I was optimistic. Like, okay, 5 years. What's the difference between 2 years and 5 years? The part of the process, what I didn't understand was that if you start early, if I didn't mess around, building this case to go to trial and mess back and forth with the government for 2 years, getting prepared for trial, if I would have just said, yeah, I did it, let's start working out a plea deal. And then I work out that 2-year plea deal that was on the table. And then I start working on my sentencing package, and I get a good PSR, and I get good character reference letters, and I have a good narrative for the judge, and I go in and accept responsibility. Hey, yeah, sorry, I did it. Here's what I was thinking. Like, Here's my mindset. Here's how I've changed. Here's the positive stuff that I've been doing since the day I got arrested. Everything changed. And then you lay that on the judge. And now it's like that 2 years is down to 18 months or down to a year and a day. That's a much different outcome, not just because the difference between a year in prison and 5 years in prison is big, but because of the lead up. I didn't go to prison until maybe 3 years after I first got arrested. Those 3 years, I might as well have been in prison because it was worse than being in prison. So
You're talking about the pretrial?
Pre-trial. Yeah. Pre-trial was so stressful that it was, to me, was worse than the actual 3 years in prison.
I tell people the same thing.
Yeah. And so
the pretrial phase is the real prison sentence.
Yeah. So if I went back and did it again, I would just accept responsibility in the beginning. I would shorten that pre-trial phase immensely. I would negotiate a good plea deal, and then I'd work on my sentencing package to present well to the judge and get underneath what I pled for. And, my process took 6-7 years total. I feel like I could cut that down to 2 years, and that's where you see the big difference. And that's where I just want people to know, here's how the whole system works from start to end. And here's how you can mitigate the damage. Don't wreck the next 7 years of your life when it could just be 2 years if you just do these things.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not complicated. We talk about negotiating plea deals and getting ready for a pre-sentencing review. It's very logical, easy things. It's not rocket science. If someone just tells you and lays it out in front of you, hey, go say this to your lawyer. Hey, get this kind of character reference letter. Here's what it should look like. Those aren't things that are hard to do. People just don't know how to do it.
They don't know exist. When you were going through this case or going through the phase yourself, at the time when it was time to do the pre-sentence interview, now you did take RDAP. So I'm assuming it was marijuana was your drug of choice, being that you were flying marijuana around town.
Yeah.
How much marijuana did you get caught with, or how was it like a one-time thing, or they were watching you for a minute?
It was pretty dumb on my part. So in the guy that was a family friend who I knew had been flying marijuana around for 6 years in a little tiny airplane, flying it all over the US. And I was a flight instructor, and I did some flight trainings with him. And he was doing high altitude training. He had a rad airplane. And so he kind of started, as I was training him, was like, hey, I've been doing this for 6 years. It's like, you can't get caught. It's all small airports. Nothing happens. I was like, really? And so he gave me the carrot. For me wasn't like the marijuana or the money. It was like, he gave me access to the airplane. He's like, dude, you can have this airplane, fly it to Vegas or do whatever you want with it. If
what kind of airplane was it?
Turbocharged Beach Bonanza. So flies over 200 miles an hour. It's a little 6-seater. So that was the carrot for me. So anyway, I only did a couple flights with him actually, but the reason that he recruited me was because someone in his operation somewhere else had got busted and stuff was kind of starting to crumble. And so he wanted a different pilot in the hot seat basically. And so when the FBI was investigating, and I did my couple flights, and they got me on camera and drone footage and that type of stuff, but they didn't. They didn't take me down.
What was the weight ultimately?
I was like 100 pounds or something. It wasn't a ton of weed. And
there was no minimum mandatories associated with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was it was 5 years.
It was 5 years.
Yeah.
So the plea deal with 24 months, what did you have to do to what kind of cooperation were you talking about if you were to take that plea deal? Whether it been 5K1s and stuff involved?
Yeah, if you take the deal, I don't know. I wasn't because I didn't take it. They just, he was like, you could take this deal.
Like a safety valve or something in there to get you underneath the minimum mandatory. So, because there's people right now that are wondering, like, oh man, how the fuck did this guy how did he get offered a 2-year plea deal, even though I didn't take it? But just so people that
safety valve isn't necessarily what a lot of people look at safety valve like it's, and even snitching or things like that. Like I tell people on calls, when you're looking, I had a 23 person indictment on mine, every single person in there took a plea deal, and probably some of them did 5K1s. Everyone starts looking out for themselves.
Of course.
And you should too. Like, you should take a 5K1 and go talk to the government and get under your 10-year mandatory minimum if you need to. People have this idea that it's like the mafia or something, where like no one tells and no one snitches.
I think people know that's not true though. I think they say that because it sounds cool to say it, like, oh, I would never tell. Like, everybody in prison, nobody told apparently, but everyone's got a 5K1 on their paper. But like what Brandon just said, unless it's like a mafia or cartel where they're going to come and kill your family, you can pretty much guarantee that whoever's in your indictment, somebody's going to turn on you. You guys might be best of friends, blood brothers. You guys, when you're 8 years old, you shared a sleeping bag and you watch horror movies together. And that's the guy that's going to tell on you, because at the end of the day, he's looking out for himself and his family and his kids and his sick mother, whatever excuse he needs to justify it, or whatever excuse you need to justify it. The majority of people that you deal with, Brandon, and the majority of people that I deal with just aren't really career criminals. So it's easy to say they would never tell, but they've never really been punched in the face before either. And until you get punched in the face, you don't know what you're going to do. So I don't judge anybody. When I had a 5K1, I openly talked about it, and I get comments all the time. You rat, you snitch. Everybody at my case had a 5K1. I didn't have to tell on anybody because everybody took the same deal. But I still got the paperwork. And if I would have went to a higher security level, it would have been problematic. And when we talk to people that are going to like mediums or penitentiaries, which is not often, but it does happen, or if they're affiliated, like biker clubs, a lot of biker clubs, they end up getting affiliated to like almost like what a gang member would look like, affiliation to some sort of gang affiliation or street affiliation. And that can add manager variables to where you think you're going to go to a camp, but really you're going to end up at a medium, and your attorney is still pushing you to do like a 5K1. Sure, you're going to get a shorter sentence, but if you're going to go to a higher security level, you kind of need to know what you're walking into. And if I were going to go to a medium or a penitentiary, I think if it was a difference of a few years, I might take the extra time just to be able to like walk the yard, not have to worry about looking over my shoulder. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
100%. Like I'm super clear with people about that, because it's like, it's not really my decision to make. And I say, if you're going to a camp, most of the people in the camp have taken a plea deal, or a lot of them have worked with the government. And if you might be going to like a low or a medium, then you need to, that's not my area of expertise. You need to think about that, because your paperwork will absolutely follow you. And so,
yes, it's short time or hard time, what?
Yeah.
Being able to do your time or doing it I'd rather serve some extra time and not be in the shoe.
Yep, exactly. So that's a different thing. Like it's definitely a different thing. This is only advice for, if you're first time nonviolent going to a camp. I had 23 people on my indictment. I knew that one guy, and he brought me in towards the end. So that one guy is who I knew, and turns out 23 people on my indictment, every single one of them took a deal. They all told on each other. A few of them told on me, and I'd never even met them. And they just the government told
how many out of the 23 went to trial?
Just me. Yeah.
Brandon, you look like such a smart, intelligent young man.
Yeah. No, I just was like, I had no idea. Yeah. I didn't know the system.
So when you went to trial, did all these other guys, were they there? Like, yep, that was the guy. I recognize him. He's the ringleader. Was it everybody pointing the finger at you?
Just one guy.
What the government does.
Yeah, just one guy. The guy who recruited me, they didn't put on the stand because he had because he would have been bad for the prosecution.
Right.
But so they found some other pilot, and that guy came in and testified that he had, whatever, he knew that my name and what I looked like, and that I was flying and when I was flying, and he'd seen my, like flight record. He just came in and just had some sort of weird stuff that the government had fed him, and was their star witness. But like, I never even heard of the guy before. He just was coached up properly. So yeah, they'll bring in, they can coach a witness to come in and sure up their case if they need to. Cause that was part of why I took it to trial, was like, they can't use the guy who I worked with because he's a con artist and he tricked me into it. And the fact that I was kind of my position would come out, and then they don't have any other witnesses. So that's kind of why I went to trial, but they can come up with witnesses, they're good at their job.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
So guys, here's a deal that we're going to do. Obviously if you text the word RDAP to 866-349-5488, or you click on the link in the description and book a free consultation, to the first person that either books the consultation or the first person that comes through on the text line that wants to get more information, I would be willing to actually sponsor the first person and pay for this DIY for somebody that needs it. Look, if you're sitting on 6 figures in your bank right now and you're not hurting on money, save that for somebody that actually needs it. Obviously, we'll give it to anybody, the first person, but if you know you can afford it, if you can afford the $495, just spend it and save that freebie for somebody else. But if you're out there and you need some assistance, you're going through a tough time and you just, scraping by to make ends meet, if you're the first person to text or click on the free consultation, which is in the link in the description, I will personally sponsor somebody to get this DIY, just because I went through it myself before I did this video with Brandon. He set me up in the system, I guess about a week and a half ago. And I went through both of the programs on the sentencing mitigation, and if you're already in prison, some of the advantages you can take advantage of in there, and how to deal with the prison scenario. And I found both of these overwhelmingly, like, the information in there is very useful information. It's not just a bunch of, oh, no shit, everybody knows this. It was actually stuff that you can apply and make a difference in the type of time that you're looking at, and not just shortening your sentence, but also kind of coming to terms with the reality, clearing your mind, realizing that, and Brandon said it too, me and Brandon didn't have a lengthy conversation before this video about what we were going to talk about. And Brandon pretty much word for word said his real prison sentence was the pretrial phase of things. Getting to prison, it kind of like everything kind of falls into place and you realize this is not the end of the world. Getting you guys there seems to be the really, really hard part, because no matter what we say, and no matter what somebody would have told me prior to going to prison, there's probably not much you could have said to make me go, yeah, prison's going to be a pretty cool place. But really, my prison experience was overwhelmingly positive. RDAP changed my way of thinking, changed my thought process. And if it wasn't for programs like that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you guys and Brandon right now. So do yourself a favor, book yourself a free consultation. There's no obligation. If you're the first person to do it, I swear to God, I will go ahead and sponsor the full package on the DIY for you. And if you get down the road and you realize that maybe there's more involved than you thought, we will put together a nice discount for you if you need the full service package. But don't go at this alone. Don't think that you have it all figured out, or, you don't need anybody else's help to solve your own problems. These are giant roadblocks we have in life. Brandon's been through it. I've been through it. And, I want to thank you, Brandon, for coming on here today and willing to team up with us over here at Federal Prison Time Consulting, because I think 2 heads is better than 1, and you completely bring something to the table that we're not doing. So it's a service that I can't do without you. So I want to thank you very much for offering this to our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And my goal is just get as many people over the hump as possible. I remember myself just having nightmares, waking up sweating. And this was absolutely a passion project for me. That's why it's so detailed and so thorough, because I just like you, I know every step of the way and what happens and how it feels. And so, yeah, I'm happy to be teamed up.
Well, thank you, my man. And we'll probably, we'll test the waters with this, and then I'll probably invite Brandon back, or maybe I'll come do something on his channel here in another week or two. And if things go well, man, maybe, you guys, me and Brandon are going to spark a little bromance and have a little, some romantic videos going forward. Brandon, I'm going to sign this off on a joke. Brandon,
we'll have an OnlyFans account we'll open up.
Oh boy, got to get us canceled. Yeah. Brandon, did you know alligators can grow up to 15 feet?
Didn't know that.
But usually they only grow 4. I just fucked up that joke. Do you get it? Alligators have 4 feet, not 15.
Oh, gotcha. Yes, I get it. So
dad jokes.
Ah,
America Dreams. Thank you very much. Both great guys. Hey, I had fun here, Brandon, and I will be back. I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting, People Up and People, Communities Method, one day at a time. All right, everybody. Peace. We're out of here. Bye, Brandon.
better.